and the players. Obviously, there was a lot on the table in terms of this rev share model, and the league, had a hard time coming to that agreement. But there were other topics like housing and other rules around prioritization and a rule called the core designation and just other sticking points that really are going to change the landscape of this league.
Will some WNBA ownership groups still be able to afford to keep owning their teams, or will they have to possibly sell?
I think this is a really great question, and it's one that has come into the forefront over the last few years quite often because, again, of that changing landscape of the WNBA. There are some ownership groups that are owned by millionaires and not billionaires, and while that sounds crazy, it makes all the difference in professional sports. And so whether or not this deal particularly forces some of those ownership groups to sell, the pressure has been on and will remain on those ownership groups.
What are the chances, Annie, that the Board of Governors will vote to approve it?
I think the chances that the Board of Governors votes to approve this one are pretty solid.
Now, what do you think this might do to the way the game will be played in the WNBA next season? I got to imagine it's still going to be them playing basketball and nothing's going to change there, but I'm wondering if there'll be a pep in their step.
Yeah, I think the immediate reaction to this deal is positive, and what we see come out of it, the critical aspect of that, will come into the forefront once the season starts, because then we'll seriously see how this deal works. But yes, to your point, I think the players are going to show up this season with a new energy about them.
LA Sparks. That's who I'm going for. That's front office sports reporter Annie Costabile. Annie, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm A. Martinez.
And I'm Michelle Martin.
And it's WNYC in New York. It is 6:50. Marketplace Morning Report is next, and then later on Morning Edition, the Senate has confirmed Senator Mark Wayne Mullen to serve as the next Secretary of Homeland Security. The Oklahoma Republican replaces Kristi Noem and takes over a department mired in criticism and controversy. We'll have more on that on Morning Edition in just a few minutes. It's a chilly morning. Yes, it's spring, but it feels like winter again. 33 with clear skies right now, feeling chillier than that. Sunny today and a high near 50 degrees. Tomorrow, partly sunny, low 50s. Even warmer on Thursday for the Mets home opener. Sunshine, warmer, mid-60s.
Support for WNYC comes from Roundabout Theater. Rose Byrne and Kelly O'Hara return to Broadway this Friday in Fallen Angels, Noel Coward's comedy of friendship, secrets, and a little too much champagne, directed by Scott Ellis. Tickets at roundabouttheater.org.
On the next Brian Lehrer Show, Howard University history professor Ibram X. Kendi, author of influential books such as How to Be an Anti-Racist and Stamped from the Beginning, The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America. His new book is called Chain of Ideas, The Origins of Our Authoritarian Age. We'll talk about that and the current backlash to all things DEI. Ibram X. Kendi and more on The Brian Lehrer Show, weekdays at 10 a.m. on WNYC.
What's new in your tax return this year?
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Progressive Insurance. Progressive is looking for individuals who want to join an inclusive and unique culture. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers. And by Amazon Business, committed to business buying solutions to empower leaders to streamline and focus on growth. Learn more about smart business buying at amazonbusiness.com.
From Marketplace, I'm Sabri Benishore, in for David Brancaccio. First, a quick update on the Middle East. After President Trump said yesterday morning, shortly before markets opened, that talks with Iran were ongoing, Iran said there were no talks. Iran has continued to attack U.S. bases in the Persian Gulf. Iran and Israel are still trading fire. Israel continued strikes in Lebanon, where 1 million people have been displaced. The price of oil is still hovering around $100 a barrel. It is tax season. And thanks to last year's GOP tax and spending law, there are lots of changes to the rules. As Marketplace's senior Washington correspondent Kimberly Adams reports, one of the biggest involves the deduction for state and local taxes.
So far this tax season, refunds have been trending higher. Rachel Snyderman is Managing Director of Economic Policy at the Bipartisan Policy Center.
We're seeing that average tax refunds are upwards of about $3,600 or $350 higher than that same period last year.
And one reason for those bigger refunds, changes to the state and local tax deduction, or SALT deduction. It used to be taxpayers could only write off $10,000 of their state and local taxes when calculating their federal taxes, but the One Big Beautiful Bill Act boosted that to $40,000, with some limits. So for folks who file this year,
about a quarter of the value of the tax cut that's provided in 2025 will be just from that SALT cap increase.
Garrett Watson is Director of Policy Analysis at the Tax Foundation.
And of course, that 25% amount is going to be concentrated in folks who are itemizing, which by our estimate is somewhere around 12 to 13% of filers.
And those filers tend to have higher incomes. Tim Simons is the founder of the Simons Group Tax Advisory in the D.C. area.
The clients who are above 200,000 and between, I'd say 200 to 400, and that are itemizing.
Simons mainly works with higher income clients and says many of them are getting bigger than usual refund checks thanks to the increased SALT deduction.
Probably about 15 to 20% of my clients are seeing a significant increase because of that.
But those bigger refunds come at a cost. According to the Bipartisan Policy Center, their estimated budget impact is about $140 billion over the next decade. In Washington, I'm Kimberly Adams for Marketplace.
All right, let's do the numbers. Dow and S&P futures are both down less than 0.1%. Dow futures down 44 points. NASDAQ futures are up 0.1%, and the yield on the 10-year Treasury is still elevated. It's at 4.38%.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Bison Managed 401k, a service where advisors actively manage 401k accounts to help individuals meet retirement goals. The Bison Calculator is available at powermy401k.com. And by GEP. With GEP Key Agentic AI and GEP Smart Software, GEP is at the forefront in agentic procurement orchestration and autonomous supply chains. And by Barron's Investor Circle, offering stock picks, market insights, and access to the Barron's editors behind a century of reporting at barrons.com/investor circle.
In a few months, soccer fans will flock from around the world to 16 cities across North America for the World Cup. The matches are happening from mid-June to mid-July, and each one is expected to be massive, tens of thousands of fans per game. All those fans will need a way to get to the games, and many will take public transit. So, a lot of transit agencies in World Cup host cities are planning to expand service during the tournament, and in some cases, they're making an extra push to finish up big infrastructure projects in time, as Marketplace's Henry Epp reports.
Sometimes you need a deadline to get a project done. At least I do. And apparently some transit agencies do too. For decades, Seattle has been planning to run a light rail line across Lake Washington, which divides the west and east sides of the metro area.
The Cross Lake Connection is something that was originally envisioned back in the 60s.
Henry Bendon is a spokesperson for Sound Transit, which runs the region's light rail system. Construction on the line started in 2016. It's faced plenty of delays, but the prospect of tens of thousands of soccer fans descending on the city this summer gave Sound Transit a hard deadline.
The World Cup was a we must have this open moment.
And they're going to meet it. The line opens later this week. On the other side of the country, Boston's public transit agency is upgrading a commuter rail station near the home of the New England Patriots in Foxborough, Massachusetts, which will host 7 World Cup matches. Christian Milneal is editor of Streets Blog Mass, a local transportation news site.
The Foxborough station was just a patch of asphalt next to the tracks,
which just wouldn't cut it for thousands of international soccer fans boarding the train. So by this summer, it'll have a new raised platform, ADA compliant, constructed in just 1 year. That's warp speed by Massachusetts standards, Milneal says.
A lot of those projects can take up to a decade to get funded and designed and completed.
Upgrades like the ones in Foxborough and Seattle will last long after the tournament, but in the short term, the Cup also presents a huge logistical challenge to transit agencies, says Yona Freemark at the Urban Institute.
When you're talking about 60 to 80,000 people coming out of a facility at one time after the conclusion of a game, that can put a huge amount of pressure on even the highest capacity transit systems.
And so most host cities plan to run extra buses and trains before and after games. The federal government will pay for some of that service. And at least for a few weeks, some cities will get a taste of what a more robust public transit system looks like. In Kansas City, for example, the local World Cup host committee is renting 200 buses to create new temporary routes all over the region. Eric Bunch is a city council member in Kansas City. He hopes the extra World Cup service could influence local transit policy after the tournament ends.
We have an opportunity here to showcase how it could work here and leverage that for bigger, longer-term improvements.
Ones to serve local commuters, not just visiting soccer fans. I'm Henry Epp for Marketplace.
Our producers are Emma Condon, Tamar Fagan, Ashley Rodriguez, Ariana Rosas, and Erica Soderstrom. Our senior producer is Alex Schroeder. Our supervising senior producer is Meredith Gerritsen-Morby. And in New York, I'm Sabri Benishore with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.